Good morning, everyone. My name is Devin Martin. I'm an elite applications engineer with TriMech. Every week, we have exclusive video tech tips that are sent out to our subscribers for free through email, where we give some quick tips, tricks, and all things SolidWorks and 3D printing. So this month, instead of emailing them out, we're bringing them to you live during our TriMech Tech Talk 2021 webinar series, where we cover all things SolidWorks 2021. So our month-long webinar series of Tech Talks have covered everything from SolidWorks 2021, what's new, 3D experience, in-depth breakdowns of utilizing these tools much more efficiently. And I just want to thank you guys all for joining us this past month while we covered all this great material. So today, I'm here to talk about how to make a living spring in SolidWorks and really what we need to kind of do to get that done. So we're going to just kind of break down and talk about a few steps, not only creating a living spring, but what we can do with it afterwards. And I'm really excited to show you some neat new stuff that, that we can do. To make the spring, a lot of times, when you think of it, it could be complex almost. If anyone's made one before, you've probably used sweep. We're going to use that today, but you may have also used like the helix tool and swept around the helix and maybe even had to create something a little more complex. Well, our goal today is to make something quick, easy, and be able to use it in an assembly really nice and quick. So let's just kind of dig into it right now. I'm going to start off by just creating a path on my front plane. Now, we're going to be using sweep, like I mentioned, and this is going to be a living spring, so it's going to move as we change it. So I'm going to leave my path underdefined, and it's just going to be this basic line for right now. I don't even care about the size because we'll change that up later as we need to. The next thing I'm going to do is just kind of jump in and create a circle. So as we create a sweep, we need two things, a profile and a path. This is our profile right here. We just created the path, and just for kicks here, I'll even create a extra little center line. In case you guys didn't know, if you use a center line, you can even use a double dimension. So rather than having the dimension, we can use the full dimension here, and I can just dimension that out. We're gonna give our spring a 1/4 inch diameter, and I just need to make sure that it is fully defined in that location there. So this looks pretty good. So everything is pretty much set. That's all we need to do to make that spring. Now comes the magic. I'm going to jump into features and just start sweep. Now our profile is the circle, and the path that we want to choose is our line. Now I know this looks a little crazy, but we can actually start now creating the spring itself by jumping into some of the options of sweep. There's an option that allows you to control the twist about that path. And we're just going to specify a twist value and specify how we want to control that twist. You can do it in degrees, radians, revolutions. I'm going to go with some revolutions here, and we can say we want to use 4 revolutions. And as soon as I do that, what you guys see is magic happening. So with those revolutions, the sweep is actually going to sweep along the path, but it's going to twist 4 times as it goes along that path. So when I hit OK, what we have is a nice spring. Now I say it's a living spring because if we take a look at the path itself, let's go ahead and grab that. If I move this, since it's underdefined, up and down, you'll see that it actually compresses and pulls that spring apart there as we change it. So that's kind of a quick, easy living spring using sweep. Now, the next thing I want to do, though, is we're going to move this over into an assembly. And I want to show you guys how we can use this really efficiently and in a neat way. So I've created a set of just kind of placeholders that I can toss that spring onto. Now I'm going to save my spring really quick. So let's just go ahead and give that a quick save and jump back into our assembly. And we're going to insert this part 2 times. Let's just bring it in once, twice. And I'll use the origin to mate my spring in place. Now, it'll have a little overlap on the bottom. I'm not too worried about that for sake of time today, but I wanted to now kind of show how we can make this spring update in the assembly. So I have a couple width mates that are free about this space here, and I could attach my spring into this assembly, and we can move it around. Now, this has been something that you can do for a long time in SOLIDWORKS. Some of you may have already even done it before. So what you may have noticed is, as you do this, and let's go ahead and set this up really quick to move around. So I'm just gonna edit this part, and we're gonna link that right to my origin. All right. So what I've done is I just edited the component in context, linked the path to the origin of my my top little spacer there. And so now as I move it and rebuild, what you'll notice is it actually does move the spring around, and you can see that the spring is kind of alive in the assembly. But what you also might notice is my other spring right over here, this guy moves with it. So even though it's really neat for one component, what it's actually doing in the background is it's changing the part at the part level. This means if you needed multiple springs in your assembly and they weren't all at an identical compression, that this just wouldn't work. You'd have to make multiple springs and have a different part for every different state that spring was in. So today, I want to also show a new little trick called flexible parts. It was in SOLIDWORKS 2020 and above, so 2021 as well. And we're going to be able to not only make this part living and flexible, but we can also have multiple versions of the same component in those different states. So I'm just going to go back to that part that I edited in context, and we're going to remove that relation that we've got there. So let's go ahead and delete our coincident. And instead, while we're editing in context here, I'm just going to create a plane. So we're going to create some reference geometry. Let me go ahead and exit my sketch. So while we're editing this, we're going to add a plane, and this is going to be a in-context plane for now. You'll see there it is. It's linked to that top spacer again. And I'm just going to drag my plane above the sweep. And rather than mating and adding a coincident relation to the that spacer, I'm going to add it to the plane this time. So let's go ahead and just do that. We'll even jump in here to make it look a little nicer. Let's edit this sketch and add a dimension from that top plane that I made to here. And we'll go with maybe 1/8 of an inch or so. We'll have a little overlap, but should look pretty good. All right, so we've got our plane made, and we have that new path reference to the plane. So with that being done, now inside our assembly, if I click on that part, we've got a new option called Make Part Flexible. Now, if I make this part flexible, it's going to ask for a new reference entity, and we can just select the bottom of that face, and I'll hit OK. So that part is now flexible. And let's go ahead and do that to our other part as well. So let's make this one in place. And since I have the same component, it's just being used multiple times. In this case, I don't need to even really worry about going in and making that plane anymore. I can just right-click, make that part flexible, and choose the reference location. Okay. And now what you guys are seeing is we actually have the same component, but I can move these independently. I don't have to hit rebuild. I don't have to do anything. I've got one part and it's in different states. This is really cool, and it allows you to have just one spring in an assembly and then use that in the bill of materials. So rather than having 4 springs in the bill of materials all at different compressions and whatever that might be, this lets you quickly create a spring using just a line and a circle, add this into your assembly, and use that one component multiple times in order to really effectively get a nice living spring inside an assembly. Thank you guys all for your time, and thank you for joining me today. I hope these quick tips have been helpful. So if you have any questions at all, just leave them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them even after the live stream has ended.